Well, here we have my pretty ancient marine band transceiver, RT550. Wish I had £1 for every one of these I've repaired. Anyway, here it is in part of my shack. I'm going to tidy up one day, folks. And here we have the aerial for the marine band. I'm going to show you how to make one very similar using simple available components. Okay then, well, we'll make a start. You're going to need 5 pieces of 1/8 diameter brazing rod. You'll get these from your local welder, no doubt. You want at least 20 inches, 21 inches. They'll be cut to exact size later. And you'll need 2 PL259 coax plugs. Show you those first. There's 2 here. They're suitable for RG58 50 ohm impedance coax. And you need 2 of those. And you'll need 1 PL259 for a larger coax cable. It doesn't matter what it is, RG213 or something similar. It doesn't matter because we're not putting coax in this one. So 3 in total. Your local ham store will sell those. You need an SO, what is it? I've forgotten. 239, something like that. Socket to fit the coax plugs. Like so. Preferably one of this pattern. I think they're called chassis sockets, I'm not sure. Okay, taking the largest coax plug, unscrew the shield and it comes off. And then grind away at the end of your piece of brazing wood, on a grindstone, lathe, file, however you like, doesn't really matter. A very shallow, thin point. The idea is we want to put it up the centre of the plug, so it just comes through the top. Okay. Then we want to tin this with solder, and tin the plug, and then we'll assemble them. Here I've tinned the tip of the spike. We place it like so, and by rotating it you'll see if we've got it in the middle. So just move it about, push it on sort of quite tight, and once you're happy it's pretty concentric. I don't think I'll get it much better than that, will I? Now solder it up. Flood some solder into the tip of the joint there, and make sure it goes, you've got no gaps, as we're going to fill this plug later on with some araldite, and we don't want it flowing out through the top. Okay, I'll just solder this up. We have now successfully soldered the centre of the plug onto our brazing rod, and it's pretty well in the centre. I'm happy with that anyway. Now we have holes in the body that need to be covered up temporarily to stop any of the araldite flowing into the threads. So with some masking tape, I'm using some red plastic tape here to merely demonstrate. Pull tightly around, cut a strip the width and wind it round and round. The idea is to block up the holes, just to stop the araldite from running out and making a mess everywhere. So I've used plastic, red plastic, for the purposes of demonstration here. Do not use plastic, as we're going to apply heat to this. I'll explain a little bit further. Masking tape will be ideal. A messy way of doing it would be perhaps plasticine or putty or something like this, but I've always done it this way. Okay, we now need to fill this cavity with some araldite, 2-pile araldite, to stop water from getting into the plug, and also strengthen up this rod to the plug. So we need to make something that will hold it upright. A piece of wood with a clip on it, a clothes peg, just to hold it, or push it into a piece of foam or something like that. Okay, it's pretty straightforward so far. Now mix up sufficient quantity to fill the void in the plug of hardener. Oh, new tube, good gracious. Hardener and resin. Should have opened these earlier, shouldn't I? There we go. There's more than enough. Equal quantities of each. And then mix it all up. And you'll find it'll go into a sort of thick, milky type of consistency. Now what we want to do, if I just pan over, yep, we want to dribble this into the top of the plug, like so. Try and keep it in there and not dribble it down the side as I'm doing now. You've got to have a little bit of patience, and I'm somewhat rushing this, and but you should after a little while begin to fill it up. Poke it about a bit so as we don't get any bubbles or air pockets. This will take a few moments. Nearly there. Oh, looking good. Keep whizzing it around, it'll gradually settle down into the plug. As I say, it'll take a few minutes. Perhaps I should have done this earlier, but you can see the process. It's always the way when you want to show something. Anyway, I think it's pretty well full there. Perhaps a touch more because it does shrink down a little. Okay, we've filled the top of the plug up. Now for a secret weapon. We need a hot air gun. And I'll just take it out of the little vise here. Hold it in front of the camera, and then with a hot air gun, just warm it. And you'll find that the viscosity will change considerably. And it goes from a milky colour to almost a clear colour. At that point, stop. That's enough heat. We've started the action. It'll go off quite quickly now. So to avoid this going off too quickly, so it doesn't crack, I've got a little dish of water, and the item will be placed in the water in an upright position and left for a few hours. And when it's gone off, you'll find that the araldite has turned to a ceramic glass. It'll be completely waterproof, immensely strong, and you should find that's absolutely satisfactory. Anyway, I'm not going to stand and hold this for the next hour. You'll have to devise some means of a piece of wood and a clothes peg, etc. But that's the operation of the first part of our aerial design. Now that our plug is completely hardened off, it's a few hours later, you can see by looking in the holes that the araldite's completely filled the gap, and there's no way you will get ingress of water in that. That is absolutely fine. So from this shoulder, this one here, from this shoulder, measure 17 and 3/4 of an inch and cut to length. Then put our sleeve back on, and that part is complete. That's the driven element of this aerial. Okay, take the remaining 4 pieces of brazing rod and solder on a little lug like so. Do the same with the 4 at one end. Then bend the lug over at 45 degrees. Let's get it in the right position. 45 degrees, just a pair of pliers, bend it over. And do all 4 so they're all the same. They're all bent over at exactly the same, so I can hold these right. Nearly. Well, you can see anyway, look, they're all bent over at 45 degrees. And these lugs are there for the purpose of attaching to our socket to make a cone shape. All will become clear in a moment. Oh, incidentally, I didn't mention, did I? From the actual bend, measure 18 inches, just a fraction longer than our driven element. Measure 18 inches and cut to length on all 4. Here I have a close-up of the socket and the driven element attached, and our 4 counterpoise radials attached to the socket with little nuts and bolts and star washers under the nuts. The star washers not only stop the nuts from coming undone but and make a good mechanical connection, but they also bite in to into the lugs and the socket to make a good electrical connection also. I'll pan back a bit and you can see it's we've got a cone shape, which is the counterpoise to the driven element. We could have made a straight dipole, just one leg down, but this arrangement represents a far better feed point impedance and makes the aerial far more efficient and far beneficial just for the price of a few extra rods. Okay, I've temporarily put this together. This is how it will be assembled, but don't be in too much of a rush yet. We've got to make a bracket to hold this this socket onto a pole or a bracket of some description, as this aerial will go outside. It needs to go as high as possible. Certainly this driven element needs to be above the roof line and needs to see the horizon for the best possible transmission reception response. Okay, well, to continue, here I have a piece of aluminium bar. This piece is only about 6 inches long, but we want a length of at least 2 foot or so. The last 5 inches approximately, bend over at 90 degrees, couple of holes, so you can screw it to the fascia of the property. And we need to cut out and drill holes the same as our plug, so it sits like so and the holes line up, and we can solder our connections to the socket. Okay, I'll assemble this. Here we've reassembled the aerial, and hopefully your project should look the same. I'm really holding your hands on this one, folks. This bar, as I said, needs to be at least 2 foot, possibly 3. It really depends on what obstructions you may have your end, if you have to clear gutters or tiles or something like this. I can't help you with that one, you'll have to make the decisions there. You will need to purchase RG58 coaxial cable. You'll need sufficient quantity to go from the aerial all the way to your transceiver. We don't want any joints in this, as this will degrade the system. I'm assuming you know how to put a plug on, but I'll do a quick demonstration here. We're going to solder onto our aerial, and this is RG58,
and I've used a standing knife to cut round the sleeving, and I've pulled the sleeving off, showing you the shield of the coax. It's so easy to cut into this. You might have to have a few goes if you've never done it before, but you can afford to waste a few inches. When you've got it to this stage and you've got the outer plastic off, you can either carefully unpick the weave to separate the inner from the outer, and one way I sort of favour is to sort of push it and bunch it up. See if I can do this on camera. There we go, I've sort of bunched it up. And with a screwdriver, go in there and find a little hole and work it around, and try not to break any, and work it round, and then slightly bend the inner. It's possible to get, I'm not sure not to trap any, and then you can pull it out. You can pull the inner out from the screening. There we go. Make sure you've got no whiskers left here. Okay, so far. We next expose the centre of our coax and tin it prior to soldering to our socket. And here on the braiding or screen, I'll put another little lug, solder that on, and that of course will go under one of the nuts on one of the bottom radials, doesn't matter which one. Okay, and then when you've affixed this, the whole thing must be waterproofed. This is most important. This is out in all weathers, rain, frost, snow, and water is an absolute killer of coax. It is imperative you seal this whole joint. I personally like to use Aerodite. Paint over the whole thing. It might look messy, but it'll stop ingress of water into the coax. As I say, this is something that really needs to be attended to. I've known many amateurs who make aerials and they've used silicone sealants of some sort. Well, this does seal it up, but there's some sealants that after a period of time attack copper. My preference is for Aerodite. I've got no shares in the company, but I quite like the stuff. It has good RF properties. Seal it up completely. We don't want any water or condensation creeping into the coax. This is most important. Okay? Now we come to the transceiver end. Again, take off the outer plastic of the coax, and instead of pulling the inner from the outer, we're going to tease away the braiding. Don't think I can get in that close, but you sort of put a screwdriver in and you sort of keep working it around and around, and gradually unweave the braiding. This will take a little while, but you might be able to see it coming away. You carry on like this, and slowly you can see it's coming away from me. Keep teasing it away until all the little pieces of copper are completely unwoven. I'll carry on with this, just persevere for a moment. Okay, that's assuming you took a little bit more time than I am here now, but you now should be able to bring the braiding back on evenly all round onto the cable. Okay, make sure you haven't, just one tiny piece will cause a short. Okay, take our coax plug. Apologies if I'm teaching grandma to suck eggs here, but we've all done it. Put that on first. How many times have I soldered one up and forgot to put the casing on? And then again with a Stanley knife or sharp knife. This only comes with practice, folks. Pull off the inner. Where's the shield gone? It's on the floor. Come back here. There we go. Sorry about that, I dropped the end. Okay. Tin this, as we did before. Take our centre of our coax and place it up so that it comes out to the tip. And if you've got the right plug, it should be threaded, and you should be able to screw the coax, and the thread should bite into the coax, holding it really firmly and making a good electrical contact into the shielding. And you can see where our front ones come through. Trim this off, solder it. Trim these odd ends off to make it look neat. Then screw up our shielding, and that's ready to be plugged into our transceiver. You could, if you wish, and you have some, put a couple of inches of heat shrink sleeving on this before you assembled anything, and then just warm it up, and it should make a nice neat connection. Anyway, I won't show you this soldered up, use your imagination. So that's the completion of this very simple aerial array. I think you'll be very pleased with it. It works very, very well, and if you've done it right, you should have one coax plug spare. Why? Well, oops. I'll explain next time. Thank you very much for watching. And the good news here, folks, is I'm now down to just one beer a day.